Nazi Party, or at least to the South African racists. Now, whatever you think about the ERG, that was an unacceptable comparison, wasn't it?
Andrew, I would say that wasn't strong enough.
Well, it's nice to see the left are taking Farage's success really well.
Are you downwind of a couple already? You've had a bigger lunch than I've had.
Could Suella lead the Tory fight back?
I'm sorry that my party didn't listen to you.
And Gaza did really well last night.
This is for the people of Gaza.
Oh yes, and Joe Biden thinks he's a black woman.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
On my panel tonight is ex-BBC and ITV political editor John Sargent, former Tory cabinet minister Robert Halford, and Apprentice star Joanna Jarju. Oh yes, and what is Prince William doing here? Get ready, Britain, here we go. On the Charge with Nigel Farage, next.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 9 o'clock, and the top story tonight is, of course, that Britain has a new Prime Minister. Sir Keir Starmer has already appointed his top team just hours after entering Downing Street today, and some of his new cabinet have started to get to work already. Wes Streeting, now Health Secretary, has promised to sit down with junior doctors in England next week to try and end their ongoing strike action. And the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has pledged to do all he can to support an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza conflict. Well, the UK also now has its first ever female Chancellor, with Rachel Reeves taking on that role. Earlier, she outlined her plans for the economy to staff at the Treasury, saying her central mission is to restore growth.
To deliver on this mission, I want to be the most pro-growth Treasury in our country's history. That'll mean doing what the Treasury does best, building growth on a rock of economic stability. But it also means taking on new challenges and new responsibilities to fix the foundations and to rebuild Britain.
Meanwhile, the US president is among world leaders congratulating Sir Keir Starmer tonight on his election win. In a call with the new Prime Minister, Joe Biden said that he looks forward to their shared work supporting freedom and democracy. And earlier, Sir Keir Starmer met with the King to accept the job of Prime Minister.
Sir Keir Starmer, Your Majesty. Your Majesty.
During that historic meeting at Buckingham Palace, King Charles told the Labour leader he must be utterly exhausted as he acknowledged the challenge of getting to grips with the role of Prime Minister. And before appointing his new cabinet, Sir Keir Starmer gave his first speech outside Downing Street, promising to rebuild trust in politics.
This wound, this lack of trust, can only be healed by actions, not words. I know that. But we can make a start today with the simple acknowledgement that public service is a privilege and that your government should treat every single person in this country with respect.
So, a recap of the numbers then, and Labour's landslide of 412 seats has left the Conservatives with just 121 seats. The Conservatives will, of course, now be looking to plan their next steps after Rishi Sunak announced he will be stepping down as leader following their worst ever election defeat. The Liberal Democrats triumphed last night with 71 seats, a huge increase from their previous total of 11. The SNP left with 9, the Greens on 2, and you can see there on your screen the other parties' seat figures too. Meanwhile, Reform UK have claimed their 5th seat, up from 4 originally, with a narrow majority of 98 votes after a recount in Basildon South and East Thurrock. The unexpected win comes just hours after Nigel Farage was heckled as he took to the stage at an event in London. Take a listen.
You're a ruling class fraud! Boring. Boring.
Well, the Reform leader was forced to delay that speech multiple times while security staff removed protesters from the venue. But he joked that it was good preparation for his new role as an MP in the House of Commons. And finally, before we hand back to Patrick, some sports news for you. Emma Raducanu is into the last 16 at Wimbledon after an impressive straight sets win over Maria Sakkari tonight. She knocked out the 9th seed under the roof on centre court, who she also beat in her run to the US Open title in 2021. And it's also been confirmed shortly after that victory that Raducanu will partner Andy Murray in the mixed doubles tomorrow in the final match on #1 court. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. More in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Sir Keir Starmer won a landslide, but the momentum is with Reform. Nigel Farage's party won 5 seats. They came second in 98 others. Reform got more than 4 million votes. The Lib Dems got 71 seats with 3.5 million votes, which indicates there's something seriously wrong with our electoral system. But it's nice to see that the left are taking this really, really well.
Are you downwind of a couple already? You've had a bigger lunch than I've had. God, he must be screaming. He's absolutely steaming. I decided that I would not. Boring. I'm enjoying this. Any more for any more?
Actually, yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they're going to get a lot more of this, aren't they?
Asked the other day, what was I going to do for the black community? Do you know what I said? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I couldn't give a damn whether you're black or white, whether you're gay or straight. I really don't care. You'll be judged by your character.
And the opinion polls among young people are fascinating. So among 16 to 17-year-olds, Reform are the second most popular party behind Labour, apparently. They are the joint most popular with boys. The Tory wipeout could have been avoided, couldn't it? The only thing they had to do was reduce immigration. That's it. This whole thing could have been avoided if they just reduced immigration. Well, everything in Britain, as of today, is now Sir Keir Starmer's problem, isn't it? Do we think Labour are going to get to grips with it? Well, quite possibly not. And I think Nigel Farage might only just be getting started. Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I am joined by former BBC chief political correspondent and ITV's as well. It's John Sargent. We've got apprentice star Joanna Jarju and former Tory minister Robert Halfon. Look, Robert, I will start with you, if that's OK, because, you know, what a great night for the Conservatives. Nigel Farage is on the charge. I wonder whether all of this could have just been avoided if you guys had reduced net migration.
Well, of course, if we'd been able to reduce immigration substantially, it would have helped. But I do think the situation is much more complex because lots of voters who voted Reform would have been from Labour. They're not just from the Conservatives. You've got also to remember that millions of people who are not activist Labour people, are not activist Liberal Democrats, are voting Labour or are voting Liberal, and they tend to be floating voters. The majority of our country is millions of floating voters who vote differently each election. So the fact is we've lost a lot because the country, unfortunately, wanted to give us, the Conservatives, a hammering. And so they voted in any way which they could in order to try and, punish us for things that had gone on over the past few years.
All right, John, we look at our electoral system there. Reform, more than 4 million votes. They've got 5 seats. They've come second in 98 other seats, apparently. The Lib Dems, 3.5 million votes, 71 seats. Is there a problem there, do you think?
Well, no, I mean, you've got to accept that it's a very different system from one that would have PR. So you've got to either adapt to that system if you want to win or complain and say, change the system. Bear in mind, if you want to change the system, you've got a government that's benefited enormously from first past the post. So the idea that Labour will suddenly be overcome by a feeling of conscience and how awful the system has worked, they won't. They'll think, we hold on to this system because we've done so well. That's called politics.
Joanna, when you have a look at the way that certain activist groups or individuals have gone after Nigel, I mean, we played what was quite a funny montage there of people going after him. Do you think they realise that actually that all just makes him more popular?
No, I think that, you know, people are angry at the end of the day, and I think that people see Nigel Farage, whether you love him or hate him, as a potentially dangerous candidate. You know, some people see him as racist, and there have been some things in the past that he said that have been racist. And for me, I've always...
Is there anything that stands out for you particularly there?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he said that principles of Enoch Powell's speech he agrees with. He said stuff about the C word with Chinese people. There's been a few things that he said that maybe to some people are debatable, but for the majority of people are just categorically racist. Obviously, the Breaking Point poster as well. And I think that reform obviously have focused so much on immigration. I do wonder in the next 4 years, let's just say, miraculously, the Labour Party do get to fix the immigration problem or do get to make people's lives better in a way that they're actually distracted and don't kind of have someone to specifically blame, i.e. the immigrants, whether reform's whole agenda will have a leg to stand on, because I don't really see much weight to a lot of the other policies that they've got.
One thing I think is interesting, though, Robert, is that all of the things that Joanna said, they are publicly available. You can go and have a look at those things. And it does just appear that quite a lot of people don't seem to care about that. And especially when you look at the 16 to 17-year-olds that I mentioned earlier there, with Reform being the second most popular party, there's something going on out there, isn't there? People feel very disenfranchised. People feel like the social contract, I think, has been shattered. And if Labour don't get to grips with some of the key problems facing this country, I think that man on people's screens there right now will start to be the alternative.
Yeah, well, I actually think these demonstrators... I'm not a Farageist, but I do think that these demonstrators play into Farage's hands. And I did get members of the public in my former constituency of Harlow, where I used to be MP. They want to be able to vote Reform without being called racist. There are a lot of very good, decent people, even though I don't necessarily agree with Reform. I'm a Conservative. They want to be able to vote, and they hate the fact that people call them racist. And the more that happens, the more that people won't understand what is going on. And that people are upset that they perceived that the Conservatives were not able to deal with the migration problem. I do think it's a very complex problem. I do think it's easy for Reform just to get up and shout it's a terrible show, a bit like that guy from the Muppets at the Stadler and Waldorf or whatever, but it is much more complex. But nevertheless, people out there in certain parts of the UK are worried, are anxious. I don't think they're racist people, but they just feel that our infrastructure is under strain, that we are an overcrowded nation, and they have genuine beliefs and they want people to deal with it.
I also do think that, seriously now, there are huge numbers of people out there in this country who lived in an area all their lives or moved to an area for a particular reason. And then all of a sudden, that hotel at the end of their road is now a migrant hotel, and they don't particularly like that, and they don't particularly feel safe. I think they do feel as though there's a struggle to access GP appointments. I think they look at things like Labour's plans of 1.5 million new social houses, but allowing people who've claimed asylum to come and live in those. And you look at the numbers of people on a backlog and expected to arrive, that could clog up a lot of that social housing. And I just wonder whether or not there's a lack of a sense of fairness there as well. John, do you see, when you see that Richard Tice has done well, Lee Anderson has done well, Nigel's done well, obviously a couple of others as well, Rupert Lowe being one of them, they say they've established a bridgehead now.
Yeah, I think the problem is, I suppose, and certainly, obviously, a lot of people feel very strongly about immigration. Big issue, very important.
Tax is another one, though, and there's
no question about that. And a lot of people feel strongly about it, they want it to happen. But everything now depends, I think, on what are the opportunities for protest? I mean, this has been a long-running period up to the election, and what you can't do is assume that it'll all go on the same way. Tories will be arguing amongst themselves, there'll be issues of immigration, people will be going into Nigel Farage meetings and try and disrupt them. But hold on a moment, there's been an election with a completely different political structure. And you've got to be very careful in assuming that, oh, well, so we'll all carry on the same way. People won't. Everything changes with the election, and you can go through a whole variety of things that happen. But one of the problems is, don't say, oh, well, you wait till the next election. OK, it's 5 years. And you say, during that 5 years, which may last the full 5 years, you will have a government with potentially an enormous majority. That is quite different from, let's have factional struggles within the Conservatives,
what do you do with
then
that?
we do this.
Then it's like, what do you do with that majority is the thing. So if people out there...
Sure.
Because well, we're going to come on to this when we look at Labour in more detail at the top of the next hour, but when you see, like, the vote share that Labour got, for example, around the same,
all that's
less
true.
votes than Corbyn in 2017, pressing, if they decide to press ahead with policies, because they think they've got a massive mandate for those policies, when I don't think they do.
I know, Patrick, but the problem is that if you're running up to an election, you can then say all these things will become important because of the election. All I'm saying is, don't expect that rhythm to continue, because they don't.
No,
it'll do with, is there a by-election? Is there a moment when, in fact, is there a surge in boat people?
We're expecting that.
No, all those things may happen. Then these rows then start up, and there may be demonstrations, maybe all sorts of things.
And he's got the personality. This is the thing, and I'll come on to you about this, John, because I worry... Well, don't worry, actually. I wonder whether or not this is the most difficult thing for Keir Starmer going forward, which is that Keir Starmer is not Mr. Personality. He's not Blair. Fair enough, we're all different people. But Nigel Farage has got a lot of charisma. That's part of his package. And Keir Starmer will have someone in the House of Commons there pointing at things going wrong. Let's say we have record days in the Channel, which we are expecting. Someone there who has got a force of personality, and I would be worried about that if I was Keir Starmer, I think.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that worries me as well. It worries me that, 3 out of the 4 reform candidates that have been able to get elected are quite big personalities that we're already aware of. Obviously, Richard Tice, Lee Anderson, and then Nigel Farage. That's basically a triple threat that's going to be huge for Keir Starmer in the House of Commons. I think in terms of personality, we've criticised him. He's boring, is this. All this way through, and it hasn't made a difference, and he's still been able to win the election. But what I find really interesting is that, especially, I wanted to go back to what John was saying before about proportional representation. Before, when it was Boris smashing the red wall, nobody cared about the vote share at that point. Nobody was actually saying, well, actually, hang on a minute. At this point, Corbyn was getting like 10 million votes. 2015, it was 12 million votes. And then it seems as if when it switches and when the other side, then it's
Nigel did always care about that, because of his thing about, I think, when he was running for UKIP, and I think it was a similar setup, actually, but they got no seats, didn't they? Sure. And he got about 4 million votes. So he has always been quite consistent on that. But I do take
it's also served him in the past being in the European Parliament as well. Obviously, that's the only way previously he's been able to get elected.
Exactly. But I think there is a case for it. And we look around at this election result now, and it's a slightly odd one, because massive Labour majority, that's undeniable. But serious question marks over how popular Keir Starmer is personally. Fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn got in 2017. You also look at his own majority, actually. Keir Starmer's going from about 22,000 to, I think, about 11,500. So you look at it and you think, well, there's not a particular honeymoon period there at all for him. But just to round this off, Robert, how do the Conservatives now deal with Nigel Farage? So this is a kind of next leadership question, isn't it? They've got to get this right, haven't they?
Yeah, well, the worst thing I think we could do is just rush into a leadership contest straight away. What I think we really need to do is have a caretaker leader for a while, actually examine what's gone wrong, go around the country actually listening to members of the public, working out what our values are, and then setting out our stall, and then the different leadership candidates can come forward. But I think, we've just had one of the biggest defeats we've ever had as a political party. Only 5 years ago, it looked like we were going to rule the place for a long, long time. It's hard to believe, really, what has gone on. And I think that the party needs to sort of come together, work out what it stands for, work out what it wants to do, work out how to deal with Nigel Farage. We're not going to be able to decide that in a couple of days after election. The one thing I do think is that if I'm not one of these people who say we should merge into reform. The guy has wanted to burn our house down. If someone burns your house down, you don't say, well, come and we'll scoop up the remains together. What we need to do is to be a Conservative party, but absolutely be clear about our narrative, our values, and what we stand for. And I think that is what has been difficult for people to understand over the past few years.
All right. Very quick.
I think the temptation for the Conservatives will be to move to the right in the same way that Labour, when they were badly defeated, moved to the left. What then happens is, as the election comes on the horizon, they tend then to move to the centre, because that's how you win British elections.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see, won't we, about all of that? And I know there's a big hoo-ha about whether or not the argument of, oh, well, if the Conservatives veer to the right, then that will be.
It also depends on what you mean.
Well, you say that, but then look where they've lost their votes.
It depends what you mean
to the right.
It depends. It depends what you mean by the centre. So, for example, in my area, people want us to deal with immigration, but they also want us to spend money on public services, for example.
All right, good. So I think one of the big things for Nigel is, he's had everything thrown at him in this campaign, and racism-wise and all that, he's overcome it. It could be quite a dangerous operator now, but look, still to come. As the Green Party celebrates his record 4-seat win, I'll be joined by their former deputy leader, Sharar Ali. Now, George Galloway's right-hand man is also coming on to discuss the fact that we have 5 honourable members for Gaza sitting in the House of Commons now. George Galloway is, of course, not one of them. But up next, do you believe in this man?
So my government will fight every day until you believe again.
Alex Armstrong goes head-to-head with former Labour MP Sian Simon on whether our new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, will implode. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We're on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Royal Academy's annual exhibition has returned for the 256th time to brighten the summer holidays. It's the world's oldest open submission exhibition. Anyone can enter work to be considered for inclusion. I'm joined now by art critic J.J. Charlesworth for his verdict. What is your verdict?
My verdict is you should go and see it. You are confronted with many things of varying quality, selected by artists, and you very much, instead of being given something to you that's supposed to be good, you have to make your own decision.
I went along yesterday, and I personally did see some pictures on the wall that I thought were absolutely stunning. I'm going to mention Peter Ucker, which I think is a remark. And now these are the 2 by Ben Jonson. Grundtvig 1, and we've got one coming out of Berlin Pool. I think that's an absolutely stunning piece of work. And then Claire Douglas should be up. Here we are, Claire Douglas.
Yes.
Souvenir from the Anthropocene.
Yeah.
That last one, actually, a very witty painting.
A piece like that was really interesting. I think it caught a lot of people's eyes because it had very kind of humorous, slightly bleak take on post-Brexit Britain. It's set in this fictitious world of Brummington, which is a sort of loose satire on Birmingham. I thought it was a bit mean.
I think we had maybe Black Lives Matter. We had Boris Johnson. I think our own Jacob Rees-Mogg made his way into the painting.
Yeah, so there's definitely a slant, a political slant, on the part of the artist. But even that said, I thought it was an interesting and enjoyable work, even though maybe you don't agree with the artist on what they're trying to say. And I think that actually made for an interesting moment because you're seeing that people are disagreeing, right? Both through the artwork and in front of artworks.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. We are on GB News. Will Sir Keir Starmer implode? It's time now for our head-to-head. So Sir Keir is bedding in for the long haul as Prime Minister, isn't he? And he wants us all to buy into that. Well, here is what he said outside Downing Street earlier today.
And so my government will fight every day until you believe again. I invite you all to join this government of service in the mission of national renewal.
Yeah, but is it really going to be so straightforward for the new Prime Minister? The country is skint, the NHS is seemingly in permanent crisis, his own party could easily split into different factions, and they face the prospect of a potentially revitalised Tory party under a new leader, although we'll have to wait and see for that, and a right-wing threat from reform. So joining me now to discuss this is former Labour MP and MEP Sean Simon and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Great stuff to have you both on. Look, Sean, I'll start with you. OK, massive majority. People have called this the loveless landslide for Sir Keir, though no honeymoon period. Do you think he might implode?
I mean, he's not going to implode, but you're right that he's got a very difficult job, and he's been. It wasn't the clip that you showed, but in that speech, he was also very clear that it's going to be a very difficult job. Rachel Reeves said, not in so many words, you know, we're asking. There's very little money. They box themselves in terms of tax, in terms of borrowing. The public services are in a terrible, terrible state. It is going to be a very slow business to make incremental progress over a period of years. And what he's saying is, we're going to be honest about it, and you know, we'll do what we can. We'll be sober and stable, but we're not going to make promises we can't keep.
All right, Alex, I'll bring you in here now. I think there are various different aspects of our society that do need radical change, OK? And you look at a new health secretary who won by a margin of something like 500 votes last night. Labour seem incredibly squiffy when it comes to illegal immigration. I think legal migration is tipped to go down a bit anyway, although people would regard that as still being too high. Every problem in this country is now Sir Keir Starmer's problem. Do you think he can deal with it?
Well, Patrick, he's the most unpopular Prime Minister coming into government. You know, his own approval rating is 8%. That's the lowest on record for an incoming government, an incoming Prime Minister. His own constituency, he dropped 16,000 votes. And as you correctly said earlier, Pat, Labour's only increased its vote share by a tiny, insignificant amount over the last few years compared to 2019. He is not a popular person. Let's get this right. The country didn't vote for a Labour landslide. In fact, they didn't really want this result at all. They're just so disenfranchised. And we saw that with the low turnout figures, extremely low turnout figures, equivalent to, 2005, I think it was, or 2001, that nobody really wants this massive Labour government. And quite frankly, Angela Rayner is going to be scratching on the front doors of number 10. She can't wait to get herself in there. And if you speak to any Labour politicos and any Labour advisors, they'll all tell you that the infighting began months ago and that they all can't wait to watch Keir Starmer be brought down and have a left-wing leader installed. That's the reality.
That is literally just made up. I mean,
well, it's not.
Yeah, it is, because I am one of those people. I am one of those people, and you're not. And that is the opposite of the truth. There is absolutely no prospect of Keir Starmer being internally assaulted or brought down by Angela Rayner or any of the cabinet or any of the backbenchers. It was incredibly striking today. Every single cabinet minister that spoke was falling over themselves to pay tribute and homage to Keir Starmer. I mean, it is literally. Can I just
ask you on that, Sean?
Literally just made that up.
Okay,
well,
sure.
Just very, very quickly, Patrick. I did used to work for the Labour Party, so I've over 10 years. So I've got some very, very good insights. Listen, let me talk. Hang on, you just spoke. You don't need to shout over me.
One at a time, chaps. One at a time, please. Go on, Alex. Come back to that.
Look, I have plenty of good Labour sources. I've spoken to plenty of them, not only in my own social circles, my own sources, but within other people in the media who are also Labour politicos. So this is not a lie, unfortunately. And I know you're going to have to come here and praise Keir Starmer, but that the infighting we know has already begun.
I don't have to praise Keir Starmer. Indeed, I haven't praised Keir Starmer. I've just pointed out.
Why not? Just out of interest, Sean. Why not? Why haven't you praised Keir Starmer?
Well, I haven't had a chance yet because I've had to be pointing out that Alex is just making stuff up. If I was going to praise Keir Starmer,
go ahead and praise him.
I'm not claiming that he's Barack Obama. He does have a low popularity rating for an incoming prime minister, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, do you not think that he knows that? Do you not think he knows
it's not a bad thing, what, a prime minister having a low approval rating? He's got a lower approval rating than Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous to say that, isn't it? I mean, this is the desperate. Labour's already less than 24 hours into Parliament.
Let's go for Sean.
It's not a popularity contest, is it? It's a knockout. It's not reality TV. It's government, and it requires serious, sober experience. And
it also requires people to have confidence in the Prime Minister.
What is good about Keir Starmer, for example, is that he was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He made a living out of prosecuting criminal gangs. He was the chief executive, effectively, of the Crown Prosecution Service with 7,000 staff, £500 million budget. He has actually direct.
Unfortunately for him, yeah. Okay, Sean. I will stay with you, Sean, on this. I mean, to counter that slightly, it is also quite unfortunate for Sir Keir Starmer that he did also sign a letter to get a load of criminals off a deportation flight, and at least one of those people did end up going on to murder someone. So if he's going to take responsibility, which he's perfectly entitled to do, by the way, for all of the good things that he's done as Director of Public Prosecutions, he also has to take some responsibility for some of the bad things he's done in other capacities as well when it comes to law and order. But can I just ask you, Sean, we mentioned a bit about the Cabinet there, and look, yeah, OK, all tripping over themselves, as you would expect, to, praise massive landslide, great stuff, right, fine. But you look at David Lammy, been incredibly fruity about Donald Trump. We played a clip earlier on there where he appeared to suggest that people who voted for Brexit and were in positions of power were akin to the Nazis. You look at Angela Rayner as well. She said things like, banana republic, scum and all of that stuff. You look at Ed Miliband, the most expensive policymaker in British history. He's now going to be in charge of Great British Energy. I just wonder if Sir Keir Starmer might be let down a bit by his team, that cabinet.
I think Sir Keir Starmer's team will needs to be judged now on what it does in government. Like, I don't think there's ever been a group of ministers that come into government that if you trawl back enough through everything they've ever said, you can't find something that some people might disagree with. Let's judge them on what they actually do. Okay. There is no way in the world that they can possibly be a fraction as bad as the clowns that they're replacing. So why don't we just give them a chance?
Yeah, all right, guys, look, thank you. We obviously could have carried this on for a lot longer, but we are bang out of time. But much appreciated, both of you. Thank you very much. Sean Simon there, of course, and Alex Armstrong as well. Now, I've got loads more coming your way. There were some votes for Gaza last night, it's fair to say, weren't there? Some new ministers for Gaza in the House of Commons. One of them is not George Galloway, though, but I'm going to be talking to George Galloway's former advisor and a man who stood for election himself as well. We're also going to be talking about the Green Party. Yes, because the Greens got 4 seats, didn't they? Which is quite a good return for them. But what do they really stand for, and will they have any impact at all? And I am going to be zoning in on that Labour cabinet. How do you feel about the people who are going to be sitting around that cabinet table? It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. This weekend's looking relatively cool and showery for many of us, but before then we do have some heavy persistent rain around. Today we've had a waving front across southern parts bringing some wet weather here, and then a pulse of heavy persistent rain is pushing its way northeastwards across England as we go through this evening and overnight, clearing through though as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. That being said, there will be some heavy persistent rain lingering across northern northern parts of Scotland, which could cause some localised issues. Elsewhere, some showery rain, but also some clear skies, under which, away from the towns and cities, we're likely to dip into single figures. So a bit of a fresh start for the time of year. If we look in more detail, and as I mentioned, there will be some heavy persistent rain across some northern parts of Scotland. We could see some high totals building up, chance of a bit of flooding and some difficult driving conditions here. Heading further south though, and there will be some showers perhaps across parts of Northern Ireland and into northern England too. Watch out for some heavy showery rain affecting more central parts of England and into Wales too. And then across more southern parts of England, we're likely to have just a mixture of sunny spells and a few scattered showers around. As we go through the day, some of the heavier, more frequent showery rain should clear away of sorts, but there will be plenty of showers around as we go through the afternoon, particularly towards the north and west. Further south and east, perhaps a greater chance of seeing something a little bit drier, but even here, 1 or 2 showers are possible. There will be some blustery winds around, and with temperatures below average for the time of year, it is going to feel relatively cool for most of us. Overnight, the showers should largely die out, so Sunday is actually likely to start mostly dry for many places, but quite quickly we're going to see a rash of showers developing, many of us likely to catch some showers, and they could be heavy, possibly even thundery at times too, and temperatures still on the low side for the time of year. Monday at the moment looks largely dry before more wet weather arrives later on. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight. We're on GB News. Now, Labour may be celebrating today, but does the election of 5 Gaza-focused independents show that the party may have a major problem in the future? Labour majorities were slashed in areas with high Muslim populations across the country. West Streeting, for example, scraping a win with just 528 votes as his majority. One of the biggest shocks of the night was Jonathan Ashworth, who was in the shadow cabinet, losing his seat to Shaukat Adam in Leicester South. Let's have a little look at what Mr Adam has to say after his victory.
This is for the people of Gaza.
Interesting. It's not for the people of that particular area then, but there we go. Here with us to discuss the rise of the Gaza independence is James Giles, the former Chief of Staff to George Galloway. James, thank you very much. And also, as well, I should just say, it was quite a close-run thing for you, wasn't it, last night? Is that right? Well, you weren't far off getting elected yourself?
Well, look, we were the result that no one was expecting except us. Liam Byrne, who previously amassed a grand total of 35,000 votes in his constituency of Hodge Hill in Birmingham, that is held now for 20 years, was reduced to a meagre rump of some 10,000 votes. We were 1,500 votes shy in a seat that we ought to really never have been able to win by any conventional logic. And had it not been for the Green Party standing a candidate and splitting that pro-Palestinian vote, well, Liam Byrne would be out of office today.
OK, fair enough, and well done. And it always just take a lot of bottle to stand as a candidate in any seat. And hats off to everyone who does that. The fact is, though, you didn't win. George Galloway, of course, is out now after what is it now? A few months, I think, as Rochdale's MP. I do wonder whether or not actually it turns out that there aren't that many people in this country who would vote for Gaza over the place they live.
Well, no, I'm afraid I don't agree with that. I think the results have shown, with 5 independents elected, all explicitly pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza, that there's a big rump of people who do care about the issue of Palestine and Gaza. Look, let's be quite clear. The last time an independent won a seat in a general election was George Galloway, I believe in 2005, with Bethnal Green and Bow. It just doesn't happen. The Green Party, up until this election, had never managed to win any more than Brighton Pavilion. The system is rigged against these small parties. Look, I'm in favour of PR, but that's a separate conversation. So the fact that despite our electoral system, which favours Tweedledee or Tweedledum that so many have cut through, I'm sorry, I just don't accept that premise.
Oh, but look at places like, for example, Birmingham Ladywood. They made a huge amount of noise there. That independent Ahmed Yaqub, who's, I think it's fair to say, a little bit of a flash Harry, described as the Lamborghini-driving TikToker and solicitor. He made a heck of a lot of noise. Lost to Labour's Shabana Mahmood, who was under huge pressure because she decided not to vote for a ceasefire initially. That is an area in that part of the world with a huge Muslim population, a huge pro-Gaza thing. He did his entire campaign with the Palestinian flag behind him on all of his literature, and he lost. I mean, if you can't win there, then what's the point?
Well, no, look, Shabana was and is a political operator, and the Labour Party funnelled in resource from London to help her retain her seat. As in Rochdale, it was one of Labour's biggest areas they had to defend. She's now the Justice Secretary. She was the Shadow Justice Secretary, of course. They couldn't afford to lose her. But in areas like Hodge Hill, we ran them incredibly close. They didn't see us coming. And in areas like Blackburn, they had a win. Look, in Blackburn, almost 50% of people there didn't vote for Labour. Adnan won. And the Workers' Party candidate, Craig Murray, still amassed 20% of the vote from third place. In places like Dewsbury and Batley, independents have won, Leicester South. And so it goes on. And these are places where Labour never saw the challenge coming. And so it shows that when there's a real grassroots operation and people understand how to operate within the electoral system, the electoral paradigm we work in, that they can cut through and make a difference. Look, politics, I don't think is going back into the box that it used to. People are awake. They know they can influence outcomes now, and I think we'll see much more of this in the years to come.
With respect, you mentioned there about the Labour Party funneling in resources from other parts of the country in order to try to drum up support for their candidate there, and I accept that they almost definitely or will have definitely done that, right? But you look as well at people like Rushanara Ali, elected as an MP for Bethnal Green and Stepney. Now, I was in her seat, and I was looking at the pro-Palestine demonstrations. And actually, a load of those people are bussed in from elsewhere as well, aren't they? And I just wonder if that is a tactic that's used to try to mask how little support there really is out there. Jess Phillips winning yesterday. In her speech there, she was heckled. She made the point, well, you don't particularly like a strong woman standing up in front of you, do you? She also said that some of her campaigners had their tyres slashed or let down, that there was abuse going on. I mean, are some of the pro-Palestine lot actually just quite a nasty bunch, do you think?
Don't seek to tar the hard work of activists as thugs simply on our side. We had a Workers' Party candidate stand in Sutton Coldfield on a pro-Palestine ticket, whose son was hospitalised after he was beaten up by 8 thugs that stood firmly against Palestine. So please don't seek to paint purely Palestinian protesters and Palestinian activists in that way. Any violence, of course, must be condemned in the strongest of terms. In the particular case you give of Bethnal Green and Stepney against Rushanara Ali, you will know, of course, that there was an element of vote splitting going on there. For a time, there were a number of independents on the ballot paper, which caused widespread confusion. I think what the results have also shown for people on the left of Labour, not just on Gaza and Palestine, but those seeking an independent alternative, is we must unite. If we split the vote under first past the post, that just results in a win for Labour.
OK. James, look, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Always much appreciated. And well done again for the result last night. And, yeah, do hope to chat to you again very soon. It's James Giles there from the Workers' Party of Britain. Still to come tonight, our new Prime Minister has been appointing his cabinet this afternoon after his party's landslide election victory. So, what do you make of them? It's going to be quite a little bit of reviewing of that cabinet coming your way shortly. But next, as the Green Party celebrates its record 4-seat win, I'll be joined by the former deputy leader of the Greens, it's Shahrar Ali, to hear what they are going to get up to. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Prince Harry, he's been opening up about the death of his mother, Princess Diana, while speaking to the founder of armed forces charity, Scotty's Little Soldiers.
Well, the Duke of Sussex joined 50 children who were being supported by the charity and urged youngsters to open up about their grief, saying, if you suppress it forever, it will eat you away inside.
Well, let's speak to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who joins us in the studio. Cameron, Prince Harry has spoken quite a lot about grief and bereavement from his mother's passing and the trauma he had. Did he say anything new that we haven't heard before?
And the difference here was, instead of kind of talking about himself, which clearly we've had a lot of in the last 3 years from Prince Harry with his memoir Spare and the Netflix series, I could go on, he was putting the spotlight back on the charity and on Nikki and her story. So it was almost like having the old Prince Harry back, and also thinking about like what could have been if he didn't step back as a working member of the royal family.
That's so fascinating. In many ways, he was sort of stepping into his old role in this. It was sort of performing a duty that he would have done back before the days of Megxit.
It is kind of like before the days of Megxit. He's been heavily involved in the charity for a good decade now, but when he came back for the Invictus Games celebration commemorations of the 10 years of Invictus last month, he spent time with 50 or so children, and he talks about how first instinct of a child when they lose a parent in awful circumstances such as that is, I have to be really sad for the rest of my life. And he talks about how those children who've lost parents through conflict feel like that, and how actually it's okay to be happy again later on in life when you've had the support, and realising that the parent you've lost would want you to be happy later on. So that's the message Prince Harry was trying to get across here.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. A lot of chat today about the Reform Party winning 5 seats now at the general election. But the Green Party will also have 4 MPs in their new parliament. A record number for the party, which had previously only won in Sussex. As well as holding on to that seat, they also won in Waveney Valley, North Herefordshire and Bristol Central, where co-leader Carla Denyer beat Labour Shadow Culture Secretary Tangham Debonair by a majority of 10,000. So, you know, fantastic stuff for them. Here to join me now is the former deputy leader of the Green Party, it's Shahrar Ali. Good evening, Shahrar. Thank you very much for having us here. I'm just keen and a good night for you, I suppose. I think that one of the co-leader winning is interesting. Clearly, they weren't put off by the fact that she still has a gas boiler.
Both co-leaders won the seats.
Yes. Yes, but was that not a slight issue? Do you think was that not a bit of a heart-in-mouth moment there when it came out? She said she's still in the process of getting rid of a gas boiler.
I think it shows that our politicians struggle also to meet the ambition of our own policies from time to time.
OK. I just wonder as well, Is there much excuse for that these days, do you think? Do you think when it comes to, you know, telling everyone that they've got to be greener and more eco-minded, now there's going to be more of a scrutiny on the personal lives of these people, aren't there?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think there are two schools of thought, and I would advocate that we're all imperfect human beings, and it helps to show that side of us that, you know, we're hypocrites, we're knowing hypocrites. So the fact that we know that we're not meeting our own ambitions to some extent, that's often a systemic change that's required in wider society to make it easier for all of us to do the right thing.
I know just because of the name, really, Greens, everyone thinks it's all about the environment. It's not, but we'll come on to that. But when it does come to the environment, what are the Greens policies? What are these MPs now going to be standing up in Parliament? Because, you know, we're going to have from Labour Great British Energy, there's a big push for net zero. So what more do the Greens want?
Well, we have a very joined-up approach. So the energy crisis is very much linked in to the economic crisis. So if we deal with better quality jobs, we produce green economic jobs with a mission. Renewables. We have the most untapped resource in the EU with respect to wind and solar energy. Putting infrastructure in there, creating green jobs that everybody can actually be part of is one of the solutions that will be helping Labour to make sure that we meet those ambitions of net zero by 2050.
That's kind of what I was getting at, actually. So from what you've seen of the Labour Party so far, do you think that, I know they've got a massive majority, but do you think they're also going to be getting the support from the Greens as well when it comes to things like Great British Energy, or when it comes to no new oil and gas licences and all of that stuff? Because there are some concerns there that that's actually going to cost a load of jobs, and there's no real guarantee as to what these mystical green jobs are going to be off the back of it.
I think Greens have been in power for a while now in local authorities, and we work together with other politicians. And so it's going to be a collaborative, constructive approach where we're actually helping them to meet their own stated ambitions and to get them higher up the agenda.
OK, all right. Some of the things that are in the Green Party manifesto. So an end to the hostile environment, this is on immigration, an end to the minimum income requirements for spouses, for those holding work visas as well. Is it open borders this we're talking about, or are we just talking about them pushing for some kind of migrant and potentially illegal migrant free-for-all?
I mean, you know, Great Britain has a veritable tradition in welcoming people who are fleeing persecution. And it's very difficult to actually extricate those people who are coming on an emergency basis from those so-called immigrants who we think are coming for economic reasons. But we want to make sure that we prioritise those individuals who are coming here with good reason, and to make sure that they go through the system, you know, the immigration system, in a fair and humane manner.
But what does that look like, really? Because from what I can tell from the manifesto, it doesn't really look like you want to deport anyone, ever.
I think there will be a higher threshold on when and if somebody is deported, for sure. I do think that the problem with the hostile environment is we need to reframe the way in which we treat people. We need to treat people humanely. But look, let's think ahead. We're dealing with a climate, environmental calamity. There'll be more fuel and oil wars, food wars. There'll be mass migration on a scale that is potentially unheard of. We, potentially, as Brits, are going to be the new migrants. You know, we're an island nation, but we don't want to actually just, you know, bring up the drawbridge in that way. We need to make sure that we're dealing in an internationalist environment where we welcome people. I mean, I was on the hustings just a few days ago, and a fairly xenophobic comment was made around health tourism, shall we say. But if we were to remove migrant labour from our NHS service, that already crippling service would completely collapse. We are a very internationalist...
It's an interesting one, that, isn't it? Because there's very much two sides to that coin, aren't there? There's the idea that it is quite unfair to pinch the best and the brightest medical professionals from other nations and then use them in our NHS. But at the same time, wanting to have the best and the brightest from around the world. And that is a tricky one. I'll just ask you this. It says here, again in the manifesto, police services need to acknowledge the institutional racism, misogyny, homophobia and disableism that have dominated policing for so long. Is that actually true?
Well, I'm a great advocate for the police, and they don't get enough praise for putting themselves in harm's way day in, day out. But what that represents really is to say that we have a lot of social sickness and animosity in society, and part of that is institutionalised. And you know, we have it across the public services, and we want to say, in order for the police to engage in that contract with the public, for the public, that serving the public, we need to make sure that they also overcome the institutional misogyny and racism which has been identified even by them.
Right. How does that marry up there? Because also you want to end the use of routine stop and search, but then when you look at, and this is, I say this with a very heavy heart, but when you look at the figures around certainly London, for example, of the demographics of people who are both being killed by knife crime and who are perpetrating knife crime, you know, that could be a big problem if you're going to end stop and search and you're going to say that you think that it's all institutionally racist.
The plan isn't to end these mechanisms by which police can act, is to make sure they're not disproportionately used against minority communities, far beyond the proportion in which they are identified as suspects. Okay. That's the difficulty here.
All right, Shara, thank you very, very much. Look, great to have you on the show.
Cheers.
Hope to chat to you again soon. Shara Ali there. Right, next, yes, our new Prime Minister has been appointing his new cabinet this afternoon. What do you make of them from what we've seen so far? I'm going to be doing a little review now of the new faces, some of them we already know, of course, around our cabinet table and whether or not you think they are really up to the job. Stay tuned.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. This weekend's looking relatively cool and showery for many of us, but before then we do have some heavy persistent rain around. Today we've had a waving front across southern parts bringing some wet weather here, and then a pulse of heavy persistent rain is pushing its way northeastwards across England as we go through this evening and overnight, clearing through though as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. That being said, there will be some heavy persistent rain lingering across northern parts of Scotland, which could cause some localised issues. Elsewhere, some showery rain, but also some clear skies, under which, away from the towns and cities, we're likely to dip into single figures. So a bit of a fresh start for the time of year. If we look in more detail, and as I mentioned, there will be some heavy persistent rain across some northern parts of Scotland. We could see some high totals building up, chance of a bit of flooding and some difficult driving conditions here. Heading further south though, and there will be some showers perhaps across parts of Northern Ireland and into northern England too. Watch out for some heavy showery rain affecting more central parts of England and into Wales too, and then across more southern parts of England we're likely to have just a mixture of sunny spells and a few scattered showers around. As we go through the day, some of the heavier, more frequent showery rain should clear away of sorts, but there will be plenty of showers around as we go through the afternoon, particularly towards the north and west. Further south and east, perhaps a greater chance of seeing something a little bit drier, but even here, 1 or 2 showers are possible. There will be some blustery winds around, and with temperatures below average for the time of year, it is going to feel relatively cool for most of us. Overnight, the showers should largely die out, so Sunday is actually likely to start mostly dry for many places, but quite quickly we're going to see a rash of showers developing, many of us likely to catch some showers, and they could be heavy, possibly even thundery at times too, and temperatures still on the low side for the time of year. Monday at the moment looks largely dry before more wet weather arrives later on. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a line, what is it?
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, this is amazing. I'm in shock. Like I said, I've never won anything like this. That is absolutely fantastic. We're over the moon. Thank you.
For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect And then you throw me into the mix, and trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
So my government will fight every day until you believe again.
Everything is now Keir Starmer's problem. It's lucky, isn't it? He's got this crack team with him.
I said live on TV, and I say to this day, if me resigning as an MP now would bring a ceasefire, I would do it.
Oh, and...
Cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynistic... Go on, Andrew.
That's just our Deputy Prime Minister there. Good job, our Foreign Secretary is much better.
Who acceded to the English throne at the age of 9 on the death of his father Henry VIII in 1547?
Henry VII.
Edward VI.
Oh, and
implication, you're comparing the ERG to the Nazi party, or at least to the South African racists. Now, whatever you think about the ERG, that was an unacceptable comparison, wasn't it?
Andrew, I would say that that wasn't strong enough.
Right. Well, where do the Tories go from here?
I'm sorry that my party didn't listen to you.
Could Suella be the next leader? And...
Are you downwind of a couple already? You've had a bigger lunch than I've had.
It's nice to see that the left are taking Farage's election really well. Plus...
I understand that a strong woman standing up to you is met with such reticence.
Good on Jess Phillips, actually, for standing up to the woman-hating pro-Palestine bullies, and...
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president.
Joe Biden now thinks he's a black woman, so that's great, isn't it? On my panel tonight is ex-BBC and ITV political editor John Sargent, former Tory cabinet minister Robert Halfon, and Apprentice star Joanna Jarju. Oh yes, and can you tell me what Prince William is really doing here? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Do we have the most gormless and incompetent cabinet in history? Next.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 10 o'clock, and the top story tonight. The US president is among world leaders congratulating Sir Keir Starmer on his landslide election win. In a call with the new Prime Minister, Joe Biden said earlier that he looks forward to their shared work supporting freedom and democracy. And earlier, the King met with Sir Keir Starmer, the third leader in number 10 of the monarch's reign so far.
Sir Keir Starmer, Your Majesty. Your Majesty.
During that historic meeting at Buckingham Palace, King Charles told the Labour leader he must be utterly exhausted as he acknowledged the challenge of getting to grips with the new role of Prime Minister. And just hours after entering number 10, Sir Keir Starmer's wasted no time appointing his new cabinet. Rachel Reeves has been confirmed as the first ever female Chancellor. Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, Yvette Cooper is Home Secretary, and David Lammy has been made Foreign Secretary. The first surprise appointment, though, was the promotion of Lisa Nandy to Culture Secretary after Thangam Debonair, who held the post in the shadow cabinet, lost her seat to the Greens. And before making those new appointments, Sir Keir Starmer gave his first speech outside Downing Street, promising to rebuild trust in politics.
This wound, this lack of trust, can only be healed by actions, not words. I know that. but we can make a start today with the simple acknowledgement that public service is a privilege and that your government should treat every single person in this country with respect.
So let's get a recap of the numbers. Here's how the seats have shaped up in Parliament since last night's vote. Labour won a total of 412 seats, although with a smaller share than Jeremy Corbyn achieved in his 2017 defeat. The Conservatives slumped to their worst ever result, with losses for former Prime Minister Liz Truss and a record 11 members of the former cabinet. In Wales, the Tories were wiped out altogether, while Labour also served a defeat on the SNP in Scotland. And it now means the Liberal Democrats are the third biggest party at Westminster. The Greens, Plaid Cymru, they both made small gains, and Reform UK secured 5 seats. Well, in other news today, away from the election, former nurse Lucy Letby has protested her innocence after she was sentenced to another whole-life jail term for trying to kill a baby girl. Earlier this week, she was convicted of the attempted murder of a premature baby at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2016. The 34-year-old had already been found guilty of killing 7 babies and trying to kill 6 others at that neonatal unit between 2015 and 2016. And finally, in sport, England manager Gareth Southgate says it's a common-sense decision to allow Jude Bellingham to play in tomorrow's Euro 2024 quarter-final. The midfielder is available for tomorrow's game against Switzerland following the result of a UEFA investigation into his conduct. He has been given a suspended 1-game ban for a gesture he made during the squad's win over Slovakia in their last 16 match. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with you for another update at 11 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Sir Keir Starmer has won a loveless landslide. Labour's vote share in England basically stayed the same since the last election. He won fewer votes than Corbyn won in 2017. They won 2/3 of seats with only 1/3 of the vote. Starmer's majority in his own seat was down significantly from 22,766 in 2019 to 11,572. Well, look, good luck, Sir Keir. And with this lot around him, he's going to need it. Our new Home Secretary, yes, has posed with a sign saying refugees welcome, just as we're about to experience a huge wave of illegal immigration from across the Channel. Our Foreign Secretary is a genius.
Who acceded to the English throne at the age of 9 on the death of his father Henry VIII in 1547?
Henry VII.
Edward VI.
Who has also gone around basically calling people Nazis.
Implication, you're comparing the ERG to the Nazi Party, or at least to the South African racists. Now, whatever you think about the ERG, that was an unacceptable comparison, wasn't it?
Andrew, I would say that that wasn't strong enough.
He's also alienated the likely next president of America after he called Trump reportedly a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath. That'll do it. And we now have a completely different foreign policy when it comes to the Middle East, essentially, some would argue, making an enemy of Israel. Our new Deputy Prime Minister is Angela Rayner, and she's got away with words.
Cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynistic... Go on, Angela.
Especially when she's grovelling to a room full of Muslim men about Gaza.
I said live on TV, and I say to this day, if me resigning as an MP now would bring the ceasefire, I would do it.
Our new Chancellor is Rachel Reeves, who doesn't know what a woman is.
Look, is it transphobic? Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions.
Not like that, though. Anyway, our new Health Secretary is Wes Streeting, who now has a majority of just 528 votes after a pro-Palestine candidate stood against him. Our Energy Secretary is Ed Miliband. Yes, he was the cabinet minister in Gordon Brown's government who pioneered the 2008 legislation committing Britain to an 80% cut in CO2 emissions. Now, subsequent international estimates put it at over a £1 trillion cost, making Ed Miliband the most expensive policymaker in British history. He is now in charge of Great British Energy, which, according to a leaked audio clip from Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury Darren Jones, will cost hundreds of billions of pounds.
We're still absolutely committed to it. It's still one of the top 5 priorities, and it's going to be a huge amount of effort to get there. We'll have to move quite quickly. But a lot of the coverage in the news was about that specific 20 case, which, because journalists like conflict, made it sound as if we basically jumped the whole thing, but we definitely haven't. Because some people would say that like 28 billion isn't enough. No, it's tiny. Like I've got people who work hundreds of billions of pounds. We need some more.
Great. Starmer will realise very quickly that everything in Britain is now his problem, including his own cabinet. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. Now, we are joined by former BBC and ITV chief political correspondent, it's John Sargent. We do also have Apprentice star Joanna Jarju and former Conservative Cabinet Minister Robert Halfon. Robert, how bad is our current cabinet then? And can it be any worse than your lot?
Well, to be fair, I think some of them are OK. Pat McFadden is quite impressive, if I'm honest with you. I don't agree with them. And Steve Reid, Lucy Powell, those kind of people. But, you know, Angela Rayner that you highlighted, David Lammy, I'm very worried about what he's going to do on Israel. And he's already indicated, you know, I do think that the previous Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was really clear about Britain's support for the State of Israel. Given what happened on last October. So I really worry from some of the clips you showed, both from Angela Rayner and so we'll wait and see. The honeymoon will be short-lived. We'll wait and see what happens.
OK. It's also worth noting as well, in case you might have missed this, Sir Keir Starmer has apparently already scrapped the Rwanda plan, so that's one of the first things that he's done on day one. When you look at the kind of calibre of personnel there, Joanna, and I know that the people will say, and they have every right to say, that the calibre of personnel that the Tories had was pretty shocking as well. But when you actually look at that now, you know, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner going around calling people scum and all that stuff. I mean, is this decline for Britain?
I don't think it's decline at all. When you look at people like Suella Braverman, who said equally outrageous stuff that really offended people as well. I think that, you know, some politicians are a bit more fruity with their language and some do take it too far. But I think that overall, with this cabinet, it's more representative of real people, and I think that that's what I really appreciate. I don't think that the great British public love to see people that just get parachuted into certain seats, parachuted into politics because they've got certain agenda or they're just a career politician. And obviously Keir Starmer's been talking so much about being a government of service, and I actually think that this cabinet quite reflects that when you look at some of the backgrounds of people like Angela Rayner, who has been a care worker and a trade union leader, when you look at other people as well that have been aid workers or have led women's refuges, for example. Those are the type of people who have lived in the real world with some of the most vulnerable and can probably help them going forward.
I mean, the thing is, though, people are saying, well, Keir Starmer says he's going to stop the boats. He might do that. You wonder whether he's just going to make them come in via Eurostar instead. I mean, we've got a Home Secretary now who says refugees welcome. I mean, that's the opposite of what we want at the moment, given the illegal Channel migrant crossing, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I'm not sure it'll quite work like that. I think they'd expect to spend some time on all these issues, and bear in mind that Keir Starmer now is extremely powerful, probably more powerful now than he may be for the rest of his time in number 10. The other thing is they're very, very grateful to him. He has authority now because of what he's done. He's led them to this victory. They're in place because of him.
Are we talking about Channel migrants here?
We're talking about the Cabinet Secretary. No, we're talking about the Cabinet. So if you think of it from their point of view, the idea they'll immediately start fighting with each other like the Conservatives did, or they'll form factions, not at this stage.
I just wonder if it's more about public credibility there. I wonder if it's more about...
Well, no.
Because if you've already got someone like David Lammy there, for example, who said, you know, the members of the ERG, so the right wing of the Tory party, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but I mean, we heard the clip of him before there. It said Andrew email system, you could basically call them Nazis. He said, that wouldn't go far enough. I mean, we've got a foreign secretary, for goodness sake.
Don't bear in mind, though, that his position is extremely... They weren't sure he was going to be foreign secretary. Oh. So he must... No, wait a minute. It looked as if he might become foreign secretary. It's a question mark when people were going through the cabinet. They weren't sure that Lammy would get the job. So he must be very well aware of the fact that if he starts making stupid remarks, he'll be out.
But he said it now, though.
Or, no, all right, but he said it when he was in opposition. I'm not saying, therefore, he's a brilliant mind or anything, but he's certainly not stupid, and he will learn a great deal on the job. And the Foreign Office are very expert at working out where you are, what you're doing, what you're meant to be saying. He will, in fact, be extremely keen to keep his position in cabinet.
Well,
that's what you're leaving out.
Focus. That's fine. Okay. But let's focus, Robert, on that, because we're going to have a radically different policy now when it comes to Israel, which by definition will reshape our standing in the Middle East.
Worried. I mean, what he said about the ERG, I mean, that was the trivialisation of the Holocaust was unacceptable. He should never have said it. But I'm much more worried about what he's going to do in office than what he said in the past as opposition.
Why? Go on then, why? Because John's point has got merit to it, which is that he's in the office now, you've got the civil service there, you've got an added degree of responsibility.
Fine, but I'm much more worried that the whole Labour Party policy will be shift to be much more critical and anti-Israel, and he said he wants a ceasefire straight away. Well, what does that mean in practice? That will just give Hamas everything that they want.
No, don't worry, the Foreign Office will get him, I tell you. Just bear in mind, they're very used to someone coming into that office, and they've then got to... There's an enormous amount of expertise in the Foreign Office, and they will make sure, as far as America is concerned, you don't move that far away from the American position.
Well, he's
and
called Trump
they'll make sure he doesn't.
A sociopath, neo-Nazi...
I know, and he's regretted that.
And what happened? I mean, sorry, I regret saying...
Well, look at the things that Boris Johnson said before about Trump and all. People often say crazy things. Right. That's not... The important thing is, look, will Lammy try and do his stuff? Will he mind his P's and Q's? Yes. Will he be delighted to be in Cabinet? Yes. Will they all, in fact, turn on him if he makes a stupid remark? Yes. Right. What are they trying to do at this stage? They're all trying to go through the minefield and make sure they don't make an obvious mistake.
Joanna,
that's what happens.
Is it a problem, Joanna, that we have a Prime Minister and a Chancellor who have both really struggled to say what a woman is?
I actually think that it's been good for them to kind of wait to get some backup information. You know, we've had things like the Cass report, for example, because they'd said a lot of things before, and they'd kind of...
Do you need backup information to know what a woman is?
Not necessarily. I'm not saying that, because the problem is they were a government in waiting, and they had to make sure that by the time they'd got into government, that whatever legislation that they put through would actually be backed up. This is real people's lives. You know, Keir Starmer was having a go at Rishi Sunak before in the House of Commons about the way that he behaved while Brianna Jai's mum was in the gallery. He has to tread really, really carefully. And what I'm saying is that before, they were quite radical and very kind of pro-trans and protecting that community. And they said a lot. And obviously, Keir Starmer even condemned another Labour Party MP about some of the things that she'd said. So now he's had to roll back on a lot of things because of the Cass report, which is why I think they should be careful before making...
I think of the points that we've heard so far tonight, I think this is kind of it, right? Which is that, for me, it feels as though that this Labour cabinet have already told us what they really think about everything, and now they're having to row back on it. And that is the concern. Well, it is.
Patrick, but you're assuming that people, in fact, say something either when they were younger or a few years ago, and they then are consistent and constantly making the same mistake. People don't. These people are going... The forces are working on them are going to be something they've never encountered in their lives before.
They had that luxury before because they've been in opposition for 14 years. So when you're in that position, obviously, you're just going to say your opinion. But what I'm saying is that now they're governing all of us.
I don't think however much I may not like this, I don't think the public are going to look at what they've said in the past, what Angela Rayner said and what David Lammy said. But I do think they're going to look at what they're doing, what they're going to do, and they'll expect them to deliver. And if he's cancelled the Rwanda thing, and then we get an influx
this is it. So let's just zone in on that. Let's just zone in on that, because as of right now, as far as I'm aware, as of right now, we no longer have a Rwanda plan. OK, fine. Now, there was mixed views on whether we thought Rwanda would be effective at all. But what we also have right now is a load of people on the beaches of Calais and that surrounding area now with absolutely no chance whatsoever of being sent to Rwanda. We also have now 90,000 people on a waiting list that were not previously on a waiting list. They were never going to be able to claim asylum in this country. So those two things have now happened. And as of right now, I can't help but wonder whether or not in the coming days or weeks, if we get good weather, we are expecting, as the French leave the beaches to go and police the Paris Olympics, we get record day, record day, record day. And we will have gone backwards in terms of deterrence. In fact, we'll have gone the other way. We'll have actually really increased the likelihood of people wanting to come. Is Keir Starmer ready for the backlash on that, Robert?
Well, I mean, because the only policy he said is we're going to have a strengthened border force, which
will take time.
Yeah, and also the Conservatives said that we'd already done that. So what I'm concerned about is if they have no deterrent policy in terms of the boats and illegal migrants, what's going to happen is if we do get more coming through, that will feed into Nigel Farage, what we were discussing.
But this assumes that the Rwanda policy
earlier
was a deterrent policy. As far as I can tell, had no deterrent effect at all.
Well, because it had never been implemented.
Well, but why couldn't they have implemented it instead of holding a general
because
election?
of all the human rights laws and all this. If it
wasn't going to work.
I wonder, by the way, now if we're going to get any money back from Rwanda. I mean, this is probably a story for tomorrow in the coming weeks, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it? I mean, I don't know. By the way, I don't blame the Rwandans here. I mean, we were completely stupid, but I mean, do we see any of that money back now? Do we? It's not happening.
I think that the leader of Rwanda had said at one point that if it was deemed that it was illegal based on international law, then he'd be willing to give the money back. But that's obviously different from we decide.
Ourselves.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I mean, we've conned ourselves out of our own money, haven't we? We have now. Yeah.
I mean, the only sort of slight note of optimism is the French clearly, because of the result of their elections, they've got another phase of the election. The second round will be on Sunday. But there's no doubt that immigration is now right at the top of the French agenda. And the idea that they will now be able to continue in exactly the same way.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop them coming from France to here.
Yeah.
Precisely the opposite.
Yeah, but wait a minute. If they stop them coming into France, they can't come on here. The point is, the whole issue of immigration now is very alive in France.
Okay.
It was not before. The assumption they were gone... It's always this problem of people thinking that everything will go on exactly the same way. Things are changing now on the continent very rapidly, and they're certainly changing in France.
I just want to quickly get in another issue, which is our health secretary. So he's now sitting on a majority of 528. His seat, so significantly weakened there. He's saying he's going to go and start talks with junior doctors and the BMA next week. We've just had a round of strikes, OK? He's saying at the same time, well, we're not going to give in to your 35% pay rise. I mean, does this guy have any credibility now at all?
Of course he does,
And they've said, oh, well, you know, we're going to sort this out. The plan to sort that out is just to have a conversation with them. If those conversations fail, we literally could be staring down the barrel in a few weeks' time of more scheduled doctor strikes, record days in the channel, a massive recalibration of our entire relationship with the Middle East and Israel. This is going to get heavy quick for Keir Starmer.
Well, let's just see, shall we? Let's just see what happens when, in fact, you do start negotiations. The doctors now accept they will not get 35% straight away. It'll have to be phased. It does depend on the whole public sector pay round. It does depend on what Rachel Reeves does. It does depend on whether she's going to have an economic statement or a budget.
I kind of agree with you on the NHS element. I out of all of them that have been elected, the one that is starting to give me a bit of a weird feeling is actually Wes Streeting. I think that the rest of them have been quite humble. Keir Starmer, even if he's not humble behind closed doors, he's been very careful to be humble. Wes Streeting has given me, even before they won the election, a bit of cockiness. He just thinks he's going to stroll into this. Yeah. And out of all of the cabinet members, actually, he's the one with the least experience. So I think that he's just a little bit... Exactly. So
we'll all see, won't we? We'll all see as the weeks go by.
The Conservatives negotiated with the nurses and managed to sort out pay increases without them being inflationary.
OK, sorry to cut you off, guys, but we're going to have to rattle on here. Coming up, myself and my brilliant panel will review tomorrow morning's front pages. Plus, we'll have a look at some viral videos as well for you. And as you can see, there we are, this country's future monarch has been keeping an eye on the general election results. So I'm going to tell you exactly what on earth he was doing there. But next, Rishi Sunak is on his way out. But who is on the way in? Let's have a chat about who on earth is going to be the next Conservative leader. I'll see you in a sec.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister. Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. The National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people, we've been able to replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War. Restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother, and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Now, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak officially resigned today as the leader of the Conservative Party, which means that the next Tory leadership race will presumably soon be upon us. But who will replace Rishi? Who is likely to throw their hat into the ring? What do they believe in? And crucially, do they have the backing of party members? So, Suella Braverman won, didn't she? She stood up, she apologised, really, in what I think was possibly a thinly veiled leadership pitch, saying, look, we didn't listen to you. And I think that was a bit of a dig, because when she was in post, she was trying to say things that I think resonated with a lot of Conservative Party members, especially. Priti Patel, she's very much in the mix, I think, isn't she? She was out campaigning as well for a lot of Conservatives, so we'll have to see what happens there. Robert Jenrick, I think many people regard as being in the mix. I mean, Jeremy Hunt has kept his seat, but good grief, are we really going to end up with Hunt leading the Conservative Party? I'm just not sure who actually takes up the reins from here. Robert, your view on all this, former Conservative minister, who's left, do you think? Or should the Conservatives go for someone we've basically never heard of? Kemi, by the way, I missed Kemi out, didn't I?
So, yeah, I think Kemi's, really important in all this as well, and along with Priti, James Cleverly. of course, might be in the mix. Actually, though those three are neighbours, constituency neighbours of mine. But I go back to what I said earlier in this conversation, is I think that we need to take stock first. I think it would be wrong just to have a quick contest, have a new leader in July before the party works out what went wrong, what we need to do, what our values are, and then we should have a leadership contest sort of later in the year. I think the party, we've had the worst defeat, I think, almost in our history, and just to suddenly have a new leader as if nothing has happened, I think will be wrong. All the eyes are going to be focused on Labour now, not going to be focused on the Tories. No one's going to care about us for a while, and so let's use this time to regroup, have a caretaker leader, and have a proper leadership
I think there is
over
some
the next
talk,
year or so.
Some talk of whether or not the party members will get a say in this, right? And I think that would be a massive, massive mistake to not have party members have a say in it, because that's one of the things that did for Rishi Sunak.
I absolutely believe that we've got to democratise the Conservative Party. We need massive, massive reform, massive year zero at CCHQ, in my view. We need to start again. We need to offer proper membership services to the party. Part of that is democratisation, but we've got to offer the membership a clear choice.
That's a good point, though, because whoever is behind the scenes of the Conservative Party are idiots. I mean, if Rishi Sunak was their man, they got that badly wrong. The whole campaign was a disaster pretty much from start to finish, so if they were advising him on that, then that was a total mistake. And I think it's fair to say that it's been quite shambolic for some time now behind the scenes. So yeah, that would have to be root and branch reform. John, who stands out to you as the next Tory leader?
Well, I mean, no, there are quite a few on this list, but I must say I think that this question of who decides is very, very important. William Hague wrote what I thought a marvellous piece describing the difficulties of involving the membership as much as they are involved, because they go right-wing.
Well, the members voted for David Cameron. So this is a complete and utter myth. What happened last time was the members were presented with a choice. They were upset because Boris had gone, and then they were presented with either Rishi or with Liz Truss. I think you need to give members a wider choice of people to choose from. But to take it away from the members, what's the point of being a Tory party member?
What about a ticket of Priti Patel and Boris Johnson?
I'm only giving half the argument. The argument is, of course, the members should have some say. It's a question of how much say and to what extent the MPs who know these characters well will be able to be the determining factor. There are lots of different ways you can organise it, but it would be much better if you can get something presented at the Tory party conference in the autumn, the first conference since their defeat, and then see how far you can go.
So you think it'll be until autumn? So conceivably, yeah, I suppose it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So
around that's your chance.
Yeah.
Your first chance of being able to say, look, we can't have all these prime ministers. This is we shouldn't. What number 4 we got in 2 years.
The conference should be an audition. It shouldn't be the place where it's all decided.
Exactly.
And then you decide later on.
Well,
you could have.
Good.
And also you decide what mechanism is. What you might do then say, let us have a review on how the leader is chosen. But at least you've got a chance then of having a proper debate, and the people behind the scenes will be shouting Kemi and shouting all these other names.
Yes, but that's kind of what I want to do now, because who is left? Who do you think is most likely to get it, Joanna?
There's no one left that's decent. I actually think that the one person that could have been decent is Penny Mordaunt, and obviously she's gone. So where do you go from there? Do they go
of the realistic candidates, you've got
Cleverly. He's good.
Kemi, Priti.
Out of all of them, if I was to pick, I'd probably pick James Cleverly out of all of them, because I think that Kemi also can be a bit too Marmite. If I was on the other side of things, I know that she's very outspoken for certain things when it comes to the right wing, and she's obviously very spoken about things to do with women's issues, which if people don't feel like Labour are giving them that solid answer, then she is. I do actually think that she's been quite a good business secretary in the past, so she's definitely capable, but I'm not sure whether she's prime minister.
I can see happens to be more intelligent than the others, which helps.
I can see a ticket of Priti Patel and Boris Johnson hurtling towards us at some point. I'm wondering whether... Well, you say that, but in terms of actually getting votes, it might not be the worst thing. And in terms of fending off reform, it might not be the worst thing. But look, coming up, some viral clips. What on earth is this now from Joe Biden?
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman to serve with a black president.
Yeah, I think he thinks he's a black woman now, and that's obviously we're just going to have to deal with that. But next, I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages to bring you hot off the press, and we're going to be getting stuck into those headlines, so stay tuned.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. This weekend's looking relatively cool and showery for many of us, but before then we do have some heavy persistent rain around. Today we've had a waving front across southern parts bringing some wet weather here, and then a pulse of heavy persistent rain is pushing its way northeastwards across England as we go through this evening and overnight, clearing through though as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. That being said, there will be some heavy persistent rain lingering across northern parts of Scotland, which could cause some localised issues. Elsewhere, some showery rain, but also some clear skies, under which, away from the towns and cities, we're likely to dip into single figures. So a bit of a fresh start for the time of year. If we look in more detail, and as I mentioned, there will be some heavy persistent rain across some northern parts of Scotland. We could see some high totals building up, chance of a bit of flooding and some difficult driving conditions here. Heading further south though, and there will be some showers, perhaps across parts of Northern Ireland and into northern England too. Watch out for some heavy showery rain affecting more central parts of England and into Wales too, and then across more southern parts of England we're likely to have just a mixture of sunny spells and a few scattered showers around. As we go through the day, some of the heavier, more frequent showery rain should clear away of sorts, but there will be plenty of showers around as we go through the afternoon, particularly towards the north and west. Further south and east, perhaps a greater chance of seeing something a little bit drier, but even here, 1 or 2 showers are possible. There will be some blustery winds around, and with temperatures below average for the time of year, it is going to feel relatively cool for most of us. Overnight, the showers should largely die out, so Sunday is actually likely to start mostly dry for many places, but quite quickly we're going to see a rash of showers developing, many of us likely to catch some showers, and they could be heavy, possibly even thundery at times too, and temperatures still on the low side for the time of year. Monday at the moment looks largely dry before more wet weather arrives later on. Bye-bye.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akweer. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys. Tonight I have got here in my hand the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's do it. We're starting with the Daily Mail. Now he has to deliver. On the steps of number 10, Starmer vows to rebuild Britain with the NHS back on its feet. Wealth created in every community, secure borders and safer seats. But after winning a loveless landslide on just 34% of the vote, they say he's got to produce the goods. We go to the Eye. Starmer tells UK politics can be a force for good. Prime Minister promises to rebuild Britain, restore trust in public life. His plan for Great British Railways will be in the King's speech on the 17th of July. Set your alarm clocks now, people. The Lib Dems have surged as well, they also know. Let's go to the Daily Express. Let us be gracious in defeat. The Express pays tribute to Keir Starmer's historic victory. Our new PM is undoubtedly decent and sincere. We will hold his power to account, but let us be gracious in defeat. Interesting headline, that, from the Express, who decided to immediately simp to the new man in charge. And I think one of the things that is just unbelievably wrong with British politics and British media at the moment. So many journalists throughout this campaign were sucking up to Keir Starmer instead of holding things to account. And, you know, we are where we are. The Daily Telegraph, streeting, NHS is broken. Good, now you've got to fix it, mate, haven't you? But Health Secretary ready for new talks with junior doctors as Starmer declares Rwanda flights are dead. The NHS is broken, says Wes Streeting. So there we go. And he's, yes, going to be on the a meeting with the doctor strikes. I'm just reading a bit more into this story. He says the Prime Minister, which is now, of course, Keir Starmer, is expected expected to hold his first full cabinet meeting, complete with junior ministers and take calls from world leaders. He's expected to move his family into Downing Street at some point. His first speech in Parliament as Prime Minister will take place on Tuesday before he flies for a NATO summit in Washington. And the French president is believed to have been the first world leader to call Sir Keir Starmer. So there we go. Macron was the first to talk to him, apparently. All right. Well, I'm joined again by my press pack. We've got former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent, Apprentice star Joanna Jarju, former Tory Minister Robert Halfon. We have spoken a bit here about West Streeting, but I am just going to revisit it a little bit, I think, because, you know, he's saying he's going to meet the junior doctors. What on earth is going to happen there, do you think? And if we start getting Labour in the pockets of the unions, Robert, this could be a problem for everyone, couldn't it?
Well, they've said they could all through the campaign, they said they were going to sort it out. So it'll be interesting to see, one, how they sort it out and whether or not they give in to inflationary pay rises that will have a huge impact on the economy and public finances.
Well, how do you see this playing out, Joanna? Because that is going to be the thing. If he's saying he's going to meet with them, we're going to basically find out in a week's time whether or not West Streeting cancel. And he says the NHS is broken. We've had mixed messages throughout this campaign about whether or not Labour were going to outuse private capacity or whether that was essentially a sin to use private capacity. So we are going to find a lot of stuff out very shortly, aren't we? But yeah, West Street said the government will be honest about the challenges facing our country from today. The policy of this department is that the NHS is broken. It's weird, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing. In the run-up to the election, obviously, they weren't giving that much detail, and that was one of the biggest criticisms. We know that, obviously, Rachel Reeves talks a lot about, you know, fiscal responsibility and not promising too much and making sure that we keep our eye on the purse strings, basically. So I can't imagine that whatever offer he's going to walk in, you know, on the first day to the junior doctors is going to be that close to what they actually want. So then I kind of think to myself, well, is it just because you come from more of a trade union background and because you're Labour, you think you can kind of smooth it over? I just don't know what he thinks that...
I think I actually might just be it. John, I'm going to get you on something else, if that's all right, my good man, because this is something that did slip under the radar throughout this election campaign, but Great British Railways, so Keir Starmer is preparing to nationalise the rail network, and presumably he'll try and do that very quickly. Is that a good thing?
No, it's at the end of... I mean, what they're trying to do is that they may roll over. Once people have got the contracts for parts of the railway, the idea is they'll wait to see at the end if the no proper group comes forward to take over, the state may take over, but they won't have to spend money on it. That is,
but they'll have to run it from there on in.
Yeah, they'll have to run it from then on.
So we are paying.
Whether or not they will do it and how much they will do it, obviously it depends on what happens in the meantime.
I thought they'd said when the contracts run out, then they'll nationalise.
Exactly.
But they're not going to invite other private companies to come. Well, they've said when the contracts run out, we will then nationalise the thing.
But I don't think that means all of the franchises will then go. I mean,
well, the impression I had from the manifesto.
Well, we'll see, won't we?
Yeah, I wonder whether or not that should be Conservative people. The saving grace for there is I think most people think the trains are so awful at the moment that, you know, maybe there will be a grace period. Yeah, they are shocking. They are shocking. Anyway, time for a quick viral video. And take a look now at what Joe Biden's been claiming. Now, I think this may be one of the biggest ever gaffes. Difficult to say, though, isn't it?
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman, served with a black president. I'm proud of the first black woman in the Supreme Court. There's just so much that we can do because together there's nothing. Look, this is the United States of America.
Yeah, all right. I mean, so basically, he seems to say that he's, you know, the first black woman vice president and all of that stuff. It's difficult. I think he's talking about Kamala Harris. Yeah. But then does that mean he thinks he's Kamala? I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to say. But our graphics department here have knocked us a little treat for us, OK? So this is Joe Biden, but with the body of Oprah Winfrey. There we are. So there we go. Well done, Joe. We've made your dreams come true. There you are. Anyway, I don't think he looks that bad, actually. Coming up, some more viral videos for you. And if you thought that the end of the general election campaign meant no more Ed Davey antics, then, well, I'm here to tell you now that you were wrong. To be fair, that looks a bit like me at my wedding, actually. Plus, more discussion on the front pages with my wonderful press pack, so stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Question is...
Should our museums stay free for everyone and anyone, or should we be charging our tourists?
So many of the artifacts are from around the world, stolen actually. I think it's almost to add insult to injury to ask people to pay to see the artifacts that were taken without their permission. One of the things that the museum set itself up for is a kind of world heritage where you can see the stuff they took from your country free of charge, because the British state's willing to do that. Is one of the reasons why we hold on to many of the artifacts from around the world instead of giving them back.
I mean, that's a noble argument, Wayman, but none of the other countries in the world that also contain artefacts from all over the world indulge in that, do they? We still have to pay to see anything that's come from the UK that might be overseas?
No, but the absolute truth is that we've stolen a lot more over many more years than anybody else, because we're we had a very, very big empire, and during that time, taking things from other countries without their permission.
And I think our wonderful country, the United Kingdom, is the cradle of modern civilization, not of the ancient world, but of the modern world. You know, for centuries, we've contributed things to the world which has spread out around the world, and the influence that we've put upon countries around the globe has been massively significant. I think it's a privilege for people to be able to come to this country and track the history of our country through our museums. I can't understand why they've ever been free. The upkeep of museums runs into hundreds of millions of pounds a year. Somebody's got to maintain them and keep them good. Somebody's got to go around the world and collect the artifacts which are in our museums. And I've always had the adage in life, if something is free, it's probably not worth having.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. I've got some more front pages for you now. So we've got the Times. The work of change begins. Starmer vows to rebuild Britain. Conservatives reduced to 121 seats. And 4 million votes for reform. So there we go. The Mirror, number 10, a picture of it is their front page. Now we begin. New Prime Minister pledges to rebuild Britain brick by brick. After Labour's night of history, Keir Starmer enters Downing Street. Well, there we go. So, yes, obviously I am continuing to be joined by my panel, but next, a couple of quick videos for you. So, this our very own Prince William has been spotted whizzing around his royal grounds on his own e-scooter. So, the Prince of Wales admitted to buying one last year to take on trips to see the King. So, apparently, he's now whizzing around one of the palaces there, and he goes off to see the King on an e-scooter. I suppose that's when you know your house is too big, isn't it? When you can get around it on an e-scooter. But, you know, it's a difficult one, this, really, I think, for a lot of GB News viewers and listeners, because a lot of us think that e-scooters are a menace, but we're also really pro-monarchy. So where are you on this one? That's what I'd be quite keen to know. Any of you guys been on e-scooters anytime soon? No.
No, I've been on an electric bike.
Well,
because
of the House of my legs, I've got problems with my legs. In the House of Commons, I had a Segway, which had 4 wheels on it.
Good for you.
So, you know, it's a stand-up thing.
Yeah.
It's brilliant because you're not sitting down. So I used to zoom around. I did run over a few MPs' toes during my time.
Yeah, well, they need to be
being
right.
one of them. Lord Lancaster, a couple of them.
You didn't have a Hamza Yusuf moment there where you managed to trip out, you fell off it?
Yeah, I know, but I just ran over people's toes because, you know, when you're going through the lobby, it's all crammed with loads of people. So, but I loved my Segway. It was fantastic. It's called a roller scoot. It's invented by this physio in Devon. It's absolutely incredible. It's great indoors, and I was zooming along around the House of Commons. I love it.
Oh, there you go. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, there you are. Well, obviously William is doing it because his palace is too big and he needs to go and see the King. But fair play. I suppose it's a greener alternative than, I don't know, driving the Bentley there or something. But anyway, the leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey, was spotted in the early hours of the morning celebrating his win by belting out a rendition of Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline as his party celebrated a night of historic electoral success. OK, all right. So he had an election campaign full of different stunts and all of that stuff. Managed to win 71 seats. So fair play to him. He's got a right to celebrate, hasn't he? I think we can, you know, say, regardless of what you think about the Lib Dems, he's had a good campaign. It's culminated in 71 seats. So the results are the results. I know that the vote share is ridiculous, though, actually. 500,000 fewer votes than Reform, 71 seats, plays Reform's 5 seats. But hey, we are where we are. I've just got another one now of Wes Streeting, actually. Spoke about him a bit tonight because he's going to start negotiating with the junior doctors apparently next week. But he embarked on an oceanic voyage of a metaphor and sailed his good Labour ship straight onto the rocks.
Yes, the implosion of the Conservatives and the SNP has put wind in Labour's sails. But the only reason we've got sails on the ship and the ship is ship-shape is because Keir Starmer took the vessel from the shipwreck in 2019, rebuilt it and made it ship-shape and seaworthy again.
Can we play that again? Is that possible? We've got to see that again.
And yes, the implosion of the Conservatives and the SNP has put wind in Labour's sails. But the only reason we've got sails on the ship and the ship is ship-shape is because Keir Starmer took the vessel from the shipwreck in 2019, rebuilt it and made it ship-shape and seaworthy again.
He's had a shocker there, hasn't he? You could tell he was about halfway through that metaphor when he thought, I've knackered this.
I know, his motive was noble.
Like
he was trying not to mix the metaphor.
It was like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. It was that
well
kind
done,
of thing,
you. There you go. Yeah. Well, possibly not his finest hour, but election nights are always a little bit tricky.
He was probably knackered as well.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed. Right, OK, it is time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. All right, then, John, I'm going to start with your Greatest Britain, although I've seen it and I think it's really weird.
What do you mean really weird?
Who is it? Tell the nation.
It's Rishi Sunak.
Rishi Sunak.
No.
Today of all days is your Greatest Britain.
I tell you why. No, because I was particularly taken by the way that he was so good and gracious and dignified when, in fact, he'd been smashed in the face by the whole country.
What did you want him to do? Come out and just go, screw the lot of you, I'm a billionaire, I don't need this.
But I've seen people often, I've seen lots of people over the years. I mean, the first time I was at number 10 and outside when there was a change of government was 50 years ago. So I've seen a lot of them come and a lot of them go. And I thought he was extremely dignified, and I liked the way that he praised Keir Starmer and obviously felt he was a decent guy and that he had respect for him. That's quite something to say when you've lost an election against the other person. And he was saying, whatever arguments we've had, that's my feeling about him. And on the other side, too, Keir Starmer being very decent about Rishi Sunak. So, you know, we live in a turbulent, difficult world where people are nasty to each other all the time. I thought that was an occasion to say Rishi Sunak on this day, not
so basically, Rishi Sunak didn't launch a military coup, and as a result of that, is now I'm only taking the Mickey job. Right, go on, Joanna. Who's your Greatest Britain, please?
Mine is Rachel Reeves for being the first female Chancellor of this country. We've actually had record numbers of female MPs this year, which is amazing, and obviously her being the first female Chancellor sets an example for all of the incoming ones.
Will it make her a better Chancellor?
Not necessarily. I'm pretty fair.
I would politely argue, you know, has she done anything to earn that other than just be born?
No, all I'm saying is that she's made history in the country, and representation matters. We all know I love a bit of DE&I. So,
all right, fair enough. All right, go on then, Robert.
So I think John said, you know, Rishi's very... I think Rishi is very decent, and one of the reasons why I say that, and he was a very decent Prime Minister of all the ones that I met, was he's made, in my view, the Greatest Britain is Craig McKinley.
OK.
Because he's just made him a peer.
Oh, God.
And this is the Barnet man. He lost his arms, he lost his legs. He's an incredible human being, Craig McKinley. What he went through and his courage and his indomitable spirit, he is really the Greatest Britain. And no one deserves more than...
That was a shame because he'd got himself through so much just to run again as an MP, hadn't he? And then, you know, there was the election was called.
But he's in the House of Lords now.
But he's now in the House of Lords.
Yeah.
So Craig McKinley is today's Greatest Britain. So there we are. Right, Union Jackass time, everybody. Come on, John, kick us off.
No, Joe Biden. Why? Because he really ought by now realise that he can't go on and that 80% of the American public, according to the opinion polls, reckon he's too old. At what point does he realise that he's doing a great deal of damage to the country that he says he loves?
I was talking to an American last night, actually, with some experience of the Democrat Party, and he basically said to me that essentially Joe Biden kind of thinks he's God. And that's what's stopping him from... He thinks he's like the second coming. He genuinely believes...
Well, so he's mad.
No
he's completely mad. So another reason for him being a jackass.
Go on, John.
Mine is Nigel Farage. And I think he deserves this, actually, because he was still partying with this guy, George Jones, who made really derogatory comments saying that the pride flag was degenerate and also comparing the LGBT community to paedophiles. So he'd basically said that this person wouldn't be involved with anything with reform, and then there were pictures of him partying away with the party. So I just kind of wonder, when he says that he's got zero tolerance for these things, is it actually real?
Yeah, I get what you mean. I do think that ultimately that story didn't have a huge amount of cut through, did it, though, because there's 4 million odd votes. But I get what you say. Go on, Robert, who's your...
So sadly, it is the director of campaigns, this guy called Tony Lee, because he was suspended. He let the Prime Minister down, he let the volunteers down. I mean, my volunteers in my area were working day and night, knocking on doors, staying up till midnight, and this guy was betting on the date of the election.
Yeah, I mean, he
shocking.
also oversaw an absolutely shocking campaign in terms of his actual job.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah, so what is shocking?
OK, Joe Biden is today's Union Jackass, honorary Union Jackass. All right, so there we go. Right, well, look, thank you very much, everybody. I would like to say a special thank you to everybody who came last night, especially Steve from Bracknell, who is a legend. And I will be seeing you all again on Monday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. This weekend's looking relatively cool and showery for many of us, but before then we do have some heavy persistent rain around. Today we've had a waving front across southern parts bringing some wet weather here, and then a pulse of heavy persistent rain is pushing its way northeastwards across England as we go through this evening and overnight, clearing through though as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. That being said, there will be some heavy persistent rain lingering across northern parts of Scotland, which could cause some localised issues. Elsewhere, some showery rain, but also some clear skies, under which, away from the towns and cities, we're likely to dip into single figures. So a bit of a fresh start for the time of year. If we look in more detail, and as I mentioned, there will be some heavy persistent rain across some northern parts of Scotland. We could see some high totals building up, chance of a bit of flooding and some difficult driving conditions here. Heading further south though, and there will be some showers perhaps across parts of Northern Ireland and into Northern England too. Watch out for some heavy showery rain affecting more central parts of England and into Wales too, and then across more southern parts of England we're likely to have just a mixture of sunny spells and a few scattered showers around. As we go through the day, some of the heavier, more frequent showery rain should clear away of sorts, but there will be plenty of showers around as we go through the afternoon, particularly towards the north and west. Further south and east, perhaps a greater chance of seeing something a little bit dry, but even here, 1 or 2 showers are possible. There will be some blustery winds around, and with temperatures below average for the time of year, it is going to feel relatively cool for most of us. Overnight, the showers should largely die out, so Sunday is actually likely to start mostly dry for many places, but quite quickly we're going to see
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
How deep is the rift between Prince William and Prince Harry? Well, it's been reported that Prince William is refusing to speak to Prince Harry and has even taken on the role of disciplinarian, which was once, of course, the job of Prince Philip. But has that job gone now to William? And does he indeed rule with a rod of iron? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the former BBC Royal correspondent Michael Cole. Himself has a lot of iron. Do you think this is a fair approximation of the character? After all, Michael Cole, surely the palace could do with a firm leader at the moment. Is Wills the man?
I think he is, Martin, and good afternoon to you. William, 42 last Friday. He's grown into the role of heir apparent. He looks good, he sounds good. Now, when the late Queen was alive, she was the chairman of the board, but the chief executive was definitely Prince Philip. She was the head of state, but he was the head of the family. He chaired the Way Ahead Committee. He liaised with the security services. And he laid down the law for a long, long time. Of course, Duchess of York, Sarah Fergie, was banished. And he also used to go through the invitation lists for any royal event, striking off people he didn't want there. So he was very much in charge. And I think the situation with William is that when he makes up his mind is made up. And he's doing extraordinarily well. And he's doing it without the daily support in public of his wife, of course. And we all wish Kate, the Princess of Wales, well and a speedy continued recovery. And I think the King will be welcoming his older son taking this more prominent role because, quite frankly, he can't do everything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening. You're with GB News. I'm Sam Francis. The headlines tonight at 11 o'clock. Well, the US president is among world leaders congratulating Sir Keir Starmer on his landslide election win. In a call with the new Prime Minister, Joe Biden said he looks forward to their shared work supporting freedom and democracy. And earlier, the King met with Sir Keir Starmer, the third leader in number 10 of the monarch's reign so far. During that historic meeting at Buckingham Palace, King Charles told the Labour leader he must be utterly exhausted as he acknowledged the challenge of getting to grips with the new role of being Prime Minister. Just hours after entering number 10, Sir Keir Starmer's wasted no time appointing his new cabinet. Rachel Reeves has been confirmed as the first ever female Chancellor. Angela Rayner is Deputy Prime Minister, Yvette Cooper is Home Secretary, and David Lammy has been made Foreign Secretary. The first surprise appointment, though, was the promotion of Lisa Nandy to Culture Secretary, after Thankam Debonair, who held the post in the Shadow Cabinet, lost her seat to the Greens. And before appointing his new cabinet, Sir Keir Starmer gave his first speech outside Downing Street, promising to rebuild trust in British politics.
This wound, this lack of trust, can only be healed by actions, not words. I know that. But we can make a start today with the simple acknowledgement that public service is a privilege and that your government should treat every single person in this country with respect.
So, a quick recap of the numbers. Here's how the seats have shaped up in Parliament since last night's election results. Labour have won a total of 412 seats, although with a smaller vote share than Jeremy Corbyn achieved in his 2017 defeat. The Conservatives slumped to their worst ever result with losses for former Prime Minister and a record of 11 members of the Cabinet. It now means the Liberal Democrats, well, they're the third biggest party in Westminster. The Greens and Plaid Cymru both made small gains, and Reform secured at first 4 seats, and then later this afternoon we heard a final seat added to that list, securing a total of 5. And in other news, former nurse Lucy Letby has protested her innocence today after she was sentenced to another whole-life jail term for trying to kill a baby girl. Earlier this week, she was convicted of the attempted murder of a premature baby at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2016. The 34-year-old has already been found guilty of killing 7 babies and trying to kill 6 others at a neonatal unit at that hospital between 2015 and 2016. And in sport, as Sir Keir Starmer settles into number 10 tonight, he'll be hoping tomorrow to find time to tune in and watch England face Switzerland in the Euro 2024 quarter-finals. Manager Gareth Southgate has wished the new Prime Minister well, but stopped short of offering any tips on how to survive the pressure of the job. The match marks Southgate's 100th game as England boss, and it's been reported that he could change to 3 central defenders with wing-backs. But he's not been giving much away. That game kicks off tomorrow in Dusseldorf at 5 o'clock in the evening. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Next, it's Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. Back from our 24-hour hiatus because someone selfishly decided to hold a little election. I'm sure it'll barely be mentioned now as 3 top comedians go through tomorrow's newspapers. I'm Josh Howie and I'm joined by Scotland's finest, and I mean that in the attractive sense. It's Bruce Devlin and Count Dacula. How are you both doing?
Good.
How was your elections? Is that a question?
Tiring and predictable, to be honest.
So same for everybody then, really?
Yeah.
What about you, Bruce? Did you stay up all night?
No.
Just waiting to see if Corbyn
No,
got back
I've
in?
found lorazepam and I've got a liking for them now. I'm not addicted, but I'm pretty sleep-proof and they work. So I had a quick sniff of the Scottish stuff and thought, Kirsty Wark, I'll deal with you another day.
Wow, so this is just coming out as a drug addict on live television.
Well, no, it's just an aid. It's a little crutch.
Yeah, no, sure. That's what they say about heroin. Right, we're going to have a quick look at Saturday's front pages.